If it's okay, we'll begin our hearings for this morning. We have four scheduled.
Go ahead.
Okay. We have four scheduled from 10 to noon. First this morning we'll hear from Ron Holt about the Division of Culture and Recreation, and I believe we'll begin on page 570 of your binders.
570, that's right.
All right, Ron, I'll turn it over.
Behind tab Culture, Entertainment, and Recreation. Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Holt, Assistant County Manager. We're going to start with talking about culture, entertainment, and recreation, at least a portion of that. You heard already from Parks. And then we're going to talk about community development this morning. The mission for culture, entertainment, and recreation is to enhance the quality of life in Sedgwick County by providing cultural, entertainment, recreational, and related educational opportunities for all citizens and visitors to our community. Throughout the organizations and agencies doing that, our employees and program partners are committed to providing superior customer service and our offerings of quality attractions, events, and facilities. The programs or departments we're going to talk about today: Intrust Bank Arena, Sedgwick County Zoo, Exploration Place, community programs. In behind tab that's called Culture, Entertainment, Recreation of the Parks as well, but as mentioned earlier, they were covered with facilities, fleet and parks yesterday. So yes, on page 570, then the Intrust Bank Arena. SMG, who operates the arena for us, is focused on operating Intrust Bank Arena in an efficient, professional manner by attracting world-class entertainment. They want to create memorable experiences for all of the guests and clients of the facility. Also, they strive to be a leader in both the entertainment industry, SMG does, but specifically, as huge a company as it is, they also are focused on acting as if they are they're the partner of choice in each community. Mission is to contribute to the quality of life in Kansas, create a lasting impact through community service and charitable contributions. Changes that have occurred: SMG contract, you remember, or of course you approved November 14th, an amendment to the SMG management agreement. The agreement renewed the management contract for 6 additional years through December 31, 2020. Additionally, the amendment calls for the first $400,000 in annual net operating income to go to SMG as its management fee, and then all net operating income in excess of that $400,000 split 50-50 between Sedgwick County and SMG. Also, I think I reported to you during the time of those discussions about the amendment, we were talking about a promotion fund, and at that time the promotion fund was taken off the table as a part of the amendment negotiations and discussions. Since that time, SMG has sent us a notice that they have established promotion fund. That came to us on February the 10th, 2015. They will be utilizing that fund to attract events to arena that may not traditionally perform at the arena or may not have chosen to perform at the arena due to financial considerations, or may choose to occur during the May through August time period. Although that has been in effect since February, and we've had a couple of announcements of concerts that you might think would be used by that the promotion fund used to attract those events, they have not at this time had to use any of that fund, and so some of the work that they've done leading up to this year is beginning to pay off in getting some of these diversification of the acts. The promotion fund is being provided on a one-time basis, $200,000. Those funds will be held by SMG and will be used exclusively at their discretion. They have agreed that once and if they're thinking about using those funds, they'd certainly have a conversation with us, but they're in full control of that. And if the fund balance should become zero prior to the end of the current contract term, They don't have, the memorandum of understanding says no obligation to further fund the promotion fund. And at the end of the contract period, Sedgwick County would have no claim to the fund.
Hey, Ron,
Yes.
if this works the way they think, it should pay for itself, right? I mean, they're going to use this to bring in acts and then get the money back when they sell the tickets and all that other stuff, or is that not what they're thinking?
In many of the acts, it is the upfront money, and again, it depends on ticket sales. Yes, if the ticket sales work, they would make that money back plus, so they would get that money back. But they're also looking at bringing in, trying to fill dates during the summer. And those are usually going to be smaller acts, and of course, those you may have to pretty much...
You may lose money on those.
Right.
And
yes. And that's why they have that caveat in there, yes. We had a promotion fund at the Kansas Coliseum, and in fact, it was working that way, that it was replenishing itself because of how it was being used and what acts it was being used with. And so it takes the act that it's being used with to have a big payday for it.
If you use it for the right things, it
Right.
should be
Correct.
be able to perpetuate itself on and on.
That's correct.
Thanks.
Yep. Other changes that we have made in working with the arena, we do have the contract administration aspect of the arena project. We work on a team approach, and so we meet quarterly, the manager and county councilor's office, chief financial officer, Chris Cronus, Christie, Steve Clausen, the interns. We all meet and talk about and think about how the contract administration is working there. And over the course of the last couple of years, we've worked on putting together a CIP, 5-year CIP program. To do that, we developed with the arena a 20-year asset replacement program. This program provides a mechanism to plan, design, construct, repair, improve, and ultimately occupy use capital projects necessary to pursue the mission of the arena. The guidelines allow for a systematic evaluation of all potential projects at the same time. It allows us the ability to develop a spending plan and consolidate projects to obtain optimal purchasing power, focuses on preserving the arena's infrastructure while ensuring the efficient and effective use of the Arena O&M Reserve Fund, and an opportunity to foster cooperation between arena management and the county. And I do have on my to-do list from yesterday's arena report to provide you a copy of the 2015 CIP projects that was requested yesterday. So from property tax funds, there's no request. As you know, the arena is self-sustaining. It's an enterprise fund. So from that fund, then, we're talking about $1,060,000 for next year. Arena operations, $350,000. Arena capital improvement, $710,000. Let me, so I'm not misleading you with that term, arena operations. You know we have an agreement with the arena that they are responsible for all operating losses there, and then we split any operating gains. What happens, and Commissioner Howell, I think, raised this question yesterday at the arena when we were presenting the arena report. We get about, I think it's $590,000. All of the naming rights agreements with the arena, Intrust Bank, Cessna, Spirit, all of those naming rights agreements are with Sedgwick County. So all the funds from those naming rights agreements come with Sedgwick County. But in those agreements, there are payout clauses back to the arena for premium seating, for signage, for a number of different aspects. That's what the $350,000 is. It's our payback to the arena from the naming rights agreements, and then the $710,000 is the capital improvements for 2015. For submission packages, we didn't have any decision packages, no revenue packages directly related to the to the arena for this year. Moving on to the Sedgwick County Zoo, that's on page 574 through 577 in your books and your binders. The mission of the zoo is to inspire discovery, appreciation, respect for animals and nature. The zoo services, it is a community asset to provide safe, family-friendly environment in a zoological setting of the highest standards, serves the residents of Sedgwick County and surrounding communities, serves an estimated 550,000 visitors annually, including nearly 50% from outside Sedgwick County. It's the #1 tourist attraction in the state of Kansas. Annually, it is estimated the zoo provides a $43 million economic impact to Sedgwick County, and they engage more than 75,000 students and adults with field trips, education programs, and community outreach programs each year. Whoops. The operation of a world-class zoo is top priority for Mark and his team, and they continue to do that year in and year out. The citizens of Sedgwick County receive the benefit of one of the largest zoos in the country, with one of the best operating cost-benefit ratios, one of the lowest in overall operating budgets for large zoos in the United States, and it's one of the largest animal collections in both species and specimens in the country, with one of the lowest number of full-time zoo staff. The public-private partnership has been in place from the inception of the zoo. With that partnership, our community has been able to create, develop, and have a world-class zoo for its citizens because of this partnership between Sedgwick County and the Sedgwick County Zoological Society. The Sedgwick County Zoo, with a total of $45 million in assets, has continued to enhance the quality of life for individual citizens and the community at large. Of that, $24 million has been raised by the Zoological Society since 1993. In September 2013, the BOCC adopted a new funding agreement for 2014 through 2018, which provides a certain amount of county funds for zoo operations, payroll, overtime benefits, and what in the remaining funds then go to infrastructure and improvements. On May 13th, yesterday, BOCC adopted an amendment to the funding agreement to change the date the termination notice to be given pursuant to paragraph 9 of the agreement in order for the county to address the funding of the zoo as part of the county's yearly budgeting process. Funding requested for 2016, that's part of that from property tax, as part of that funding agreement is $6,006,191. There are no funds for services from non-property tax funds, and there are no decision packages or revenue packages related to the zoo. Moving on to Exploration Place, it's on 581 through 584 of your books, your binders. The mission is to inspire deeper interest in science through creative and fun experiences for people of all ages. The services that are provided, it is Kansas's premier science center, offers innovative hands-on exhibits, educational film shows, and programs for the general public, serves the citizens of Sedgwick County and the residents of the state. For the fiscal year 2013 through 2014, served 50,000 in education programs both on and off-site. Provides quality education resources focused on STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, for those in the county and in the state. The standards-based STEM education programs provide partnerships, schools, and groups in the county and state that help meet their educational objectives and goals. Since opening, they've provided these programs to more than 450,000 students in the county and other parts of the state. Through these programs, Exploration Place is creating a direct link to prepare the 21st century workforce and spark an interest in young people to consider careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Currently, EP has 40 FTEs, which is far below the national data for comparable size science centers. And I think Jan and her staff on many days feel the effects of trying to operate, of course, efficiently, but to make sure that they're doing it effective with that size staff and all that they're doing. BOCC adopted a funding agreement in 2013 for 2014 through 2018, which helps with the funding of operations, which allows EP fundraising for support of the renovation of exhibits that increase earned revenue. Improvements had been deferred for 14 years for this iconic building, worked on addressing deferred improvements in 2014. And again, like the zoo yesterday, you adopted the amendment to the funding agreement that changes that date to give notice of termination if it's required to September 1 rather than June 1, so that we are able to get through the budgeting process each year. The 2016 request for funding for services from property tax funds for Expiration Place is $2,255,140. This is the same amount that's in the funding agreement for 2015. The request for non-property tax funds, none. There are no decision packages and no revenue packages. Community programs under the culture and recreation and entertainment segment, pages 578 through 580. The mission of providing this kind of funding is support of local agencies who provide enhanced quality of life for Sedgwick County residents and visitors. There are a variety of cultural and recreational activities through community partners. The programs or the partners here: Kansas Junior Livestock Association, Sedgwick County Fair Association, Arts Council, the Kansas African American Museum, the Wichita Sedgwick County Historical Museum, and the Greater Wichita Area Sports Commission. Requested funding for 2016 for all of these programs from property tax funds, $333,256. This is the same amount for these programs over the last several years. Requests for non-property tax funds, none, and no decision packages and no revenue packages for community programs. In summary, from property tax funds, we're looking at $8,594,587. From non-property tax funds, $1,060,000 for 2016. Again, there were no decision packages, no revenue packages, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Commissioner Peterjohn?
Yes. Ron, let me start out with the arena and jump back with the increase on the capital side from $250,000 to $710,000. That's a pretty dramatic increase, and we wanted to get a breakdown on that. If that continues at that rate, looking at revenues that come into the arena, and if the expenditure level is at that level or higher, we're going to be eventually wearing down our O&M reserve fund. Is there any projection you can give us in terms of that increase in expenditures are not going to continue to grow in the out years, or is this, we're looking at an increase for this year and next year that's going to exceed our revenues, and that's going to draw down that fund?
Right now, as we looked out at that 20-year asset replacement program, we really focused. We have 20 years worth of thoughts about what might be needed and when it might be needed, why it might be needed. Then we focused on the next 5 years. Over the next 5 years, I think in one of those years, there's probably, I think, over a $3 million capital program. But Mr. Cronus has run the numbers on that, and I don't remember the exact year, but I think we're well over 20 years, funding well over 20 years, if my memory serves me correct.
So do you have a ballpark in terms of how much is expected to be spent over the 20 years? If we were at the level of $700,000, and I'm going to leave the contractuals aside for a moment, if I add those in, we're over $1 million a year. You're talking about, that's even larger than the entire O&M reserve at this point.
That's correct. But remember, the contractuals operational piece comes out of that $590,000. So it's a pass through. We get money, we give it that portion of it out. Also, and I think on the numbers that Mr. Cronus ran, I don't think he put in there any income that we might get from operations, and we probably won't every year, but we do expect many, if not most years, to get some income from the arena operations.
Well, that's a good hope. Unfortunately, I think the reality is, I think that's going to be few and far between, unfortunately, in my opinion, but I'd love to be proven wrong. Let me switch topics a little bit, go over to the zoo. I noticed that the budget numbers here talked about on page 575 of the budget book, the contractual services. We have a revised number that's just a shade under 5.4 million, and I know the Elephant Barn's 5.3 million. I was curious what the extra $100,000, or almost $100,000, was for.
This year's, help me out, Lindsay.
So the way we do the budget, typically we look at how many, because we budget at a position level, we see how many positions are there and what those costs equate to in the adopted budget, and then the difference we budget in the contractual line in order to meet the total funding agreement. And so the way the agreement works, the zoo gets whatever is not spent at the end of the year on personnel. But that contractual amount historically has been paid out in two payments over the course of the year.
Yeah, the way I was going to answer that, if you take the $10.9 million there that's on total expenditures under 2015 revised, if you take out $5.3 million, whatever that difference is what the funding agreement called for 2015. Expenditures out of the funding agreement first all go to county zoo-covered employees, and whatever's left over can be used for infrastructure. And so I think the result there is about a little less than $100,000 for infrastructure for 2015. That's carried there in that contractual services.
Okay, because I was looking at the revised number for personnel, and adding on $388,000 was the figure that had been given at the last zoo board meeting that I attended as the increase between the 16 budget and the 15 budget. And I noticed that on the contractual end and the adding up, when I got to the aggregate number, after subtracting the $5.3 million for the Elephant Barn, which was that one-time payment, I was trying to come up with the number on the $6,191, and trying to work those numbers together from that revised figure that in terms of personnel. And maybe that's a better question for Mark, Ron, if I've gotten too deep in the fiscal weeds here. But I wanted to make sure I understood the $388,000. We were talking about a year-over-year increase of between 7% and 8% for zoo funding. That was part of our discussion at the zoo board. Of course, Ron, you're on the board with me at this point too. So I wanted to try and make sure I understood how that $388,000 and a year-over-year increase of between 7% and 8% fit in with these numbers.
When we do the funding agreement, especially the 5-year funding agreement, Mark and his board, they have to estimate in each of those 5 years what their personnel costs are going to be based on what previous years have been, based on adding new employees, all of those kinds of overtime, all of those kinds of inclusions. And based on the 2016 budget, remember this was 3 years ago when we negotiated this, they estimated that the personnel cost for 2016 was going to be $5,734,216, which is about $216,000 more than what they had estimated for the personnel cost in 2015. Remember, I think we discussed this was. I don't think the elephant manager position and others came on until 2017. So this was adding back, I think, 2 positions that had been cut of zookeepers in previous budgets, and they were finding, and especially in the audit we had last year, they were short-staffed and not getting some things done in a timely fashion. But all of this was estimated back in 2013 when we were negotiating those, is that the personnel cost for 2016 would be $5,734,216. And if that being the case, then that left out of that $6,271,975 for contractual services, which would go to infrastructure. It very well may be that in 2016, if you have turnover and it lasts for a long time, or if you are fully staffed and you're fully staffed all year, that number may be more or less. And when it is more or less, then you have more or less money to go into contractuals. So it's at the end of the year that you're determining really how much money you have in contractuals based on how much you've paid out for employees.
Your personnel costs.
Right.
Okay. Well, let me ask them, because this
Can I
budget.
interject here? Along that same question that of your staff, 5.7 million. I mean, most of our departments, we have budgets and we don't spend everything that we budget. I think we 85%. I can't remember what the factor is that you told me.
Closer to 95% for personnel.
Okay. Do we have historical data on individual departments like the zoo that say this was what we budgeted in just on personnel and what we actually spent?
We can pull that together.
Okay.
Well, let me ask Ron, because the 16 presentation we've got here is we've got, I think, half a dozen new positions being added on the staff out at the zoo. It's about a 6% increase. I think it's like 108.5 over 100. Mark, is that right? 108.5 for 16 over 102 this year?
They are on manning tables right now. They will be hired in 2015, in the latter part of 2015. They'll be full FTEs, full 5 keepers next year, and an elephant manager next year, and 1 maintenance person next year.
If you go to page 577, at the bottom, 2015 adopted FTEs, 102. 2015 revised, 107.5. 2016, 108.5. Again, at the time that we were doing this agreement, elephants were coming a bit later than what they are now, or going to be coming, and that's why you see these FTE changes earlier in the budget than what had been anticipated when we negotiated the agreement.
Well, let me ask another question, since we've got it on the personnel end. Mark, how many folks you've got working for you as of today?
102 or 103 full-time.
Okay. Thank you.
Ron, I have some questions on that same page. Then we have some other positions that look like, are we dropping those off then, like some part-time service workers, maintenance? I mean, is that what's happening?
We have dropped some part-time positions off of our manning tables. Yes.
Are those positions filled now?
Some are, some are not.
To me, it just looks
Don't
like.
check that to be sure.
To me, it just looks like 2 part-timers that would add up to 1 FTE that we're eliminating then, and then adding the others on. I'm just trying to make sure I'm reading this correct. But
Well, and if I can just do a point of order, you may recall there was an agenda item several months ago that actually served to eliminate several part-time positions and replace them with full-time positions. And so that's what you're seeing here in that 2015 revised column is that action to shift the staffing table around.
Okay, so these part-timers next year will go away from this table, right?
Yes.
Right.
But we have other full-timers that are making up that
Right.
that difference. Got it.
Right.
Okay.
If no other questions, and I can get some help.
I think we might.
I have some questions as
Oh,
well.
okay.
I was just waiting for my turn, if that's okay. I'm just curious on the Interest Bank Arena. There was a $460,000 increase in 2015 on the capital improvements. Can you talk about that a little bit so I understand what the history is there?
For which year?
Well, between on, let's see, where is it? On last year's budget, that jumped up by $460,000 for.
Yes. As you note there, the capital improvements for 2015 in the adopted budget was 250. It ended up in the revised budget at 710. Those were some emergency projects as well as some additional capital improvements that were allowed for 2015.
So that same level of funding is needed for future years?
The future year funding will go, it'll be different every year. These, I think in 2017, there's an amount of over $1 million. I think in 2018, it's over $3 million, and then it comes back down again because we're looking at replacements and upgrades as the facility gets used and gets older. The first 5 years, we kind of had that arbitrary, you need to limit your capital improvements to $250,000 a year or less. And we've worked on that. Building is now headed into its 6th year of operation, and consequently we're seeing, and when I send you the CIP list for 2015, you're going to notice that about 75% of the projects on there are IT related. And again, about 5-year life for technology, and things are needed to be replaced and or upgraded.
Okay. All right, that's fine. I have a couple other questions real quick. For the zoo, do we know if USD 259, do they pay, what's their relationship with the zoo as far as, or even an exploration place as well? I did ask about the independent school yesterday during the board meeting, but I'd like to know about the public schools, 259 specifically. Are they paying money for exploration place and for the zoo, and if so, how much?
I don't know that I can, and I don't know that Mark and Jan would have specific numbers. What I can tell you is that both Exploration Place and the zoo, on their private side of the operation, have funds to provide scholarships for Title I school children to attend events or programs there. If a specific program is being provided, similar to what the independent school was talking about yesterday, then yes, there could be a charge for those programs to the school district. But especially for the Title I children, those scholarships are provided out of the private operating funds of both the zoo and Exploration Place.
That sounds like it's kind of well, okay. So let me ask the question differently. So if a school wants to do a field trip and they bring busloads of kids out to the zoo, is there some way that the school system is paying anything for that visit, or is this something what's the arrangement there?
We have a school rates for all public and private schools. It's the same. We have discounted rates for all Title I schools, no matter whether they're within our county or outside our county, and those are underwritten by private funding. We also have additional fundings that we are providing the bus service, paying for the bus service
to the zoo, because that's the biggest problem now is that the old days of everybody bringing their kids to the zoo in private cars is no longer doable for liability reasons. So the bus trips are most expensive. So we actually have a special fund that schools can apply for to cover the bus expenses to come to the zoo.
And I believe that's the same for Exploration Place except for the bus fund.
Buses, and we're under discussion about that.
Is that funded by us or?
Oh, it's funded from private sectors.
Same here, private.
So curiously, I guess I'd like to get a some type of a report or a briefing regarding what so the Title I schools pay a certain amount, it's less,
Yes.
and the non-Title I schools pay more. What I'd just like to have an idea what those.
It's about
How that works out.
It's about $450 in a group rate.
Why don't we have Jan and Mark provide us a little summary, and we'll get that to you in the next day or so.
That would be very helpful. That'd be great. Then on slide number 17 for the zoo, I have a question regarding. There's a comment that talks about zoo. The funding agreement pays for zoo operations, payroll, overtime, benefits, and infrastructure improvements. Can we get a breakdown? Is there some percentages, or how do I know what part of that money is going towards infrastructure and improvements, or is there any way I can understand that better? Is there some breakdown that would help me understand how much of that money is for improvements and infrastructure?
An example would be go back to 2013 actual on page 575. So the funding agreement that year was for $4,958,185. $4,844,827 were actual payments for personnel. That was regular salaries, overtime, benefits that happened in that particular year. That meant then there was $113,358 that was left over to be applied to infrastructure. The application, while we budget personnel and contractuals, the actual application of the money that goes to contractual services can't or doesn't happen until after you see what your personnel costs have been for that particular year. Because the funding agreement and the operating agreement says first at the zoo the funds will go to personnel, any remaining funds will be used for infrastructure.
Well, how do we come up with an estimate then for 2016 budget that says $271,975? Where did that number come from? That's a planned unused money that's going to be available for infrastructure. That
when we went and sat down with the zoo and the zoo board back in 2013 to look at the 5-year agreement, they then had planned what their personnel expenditures were going to be in 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. Based on those, and then what their total needs were, and based on what the personnel expenditures were, subtracted from the total needs, became the budgeted contractual number. That number may change,
right.
Probably will change because of the uncertainty with what personnel is going to do in a given year when you're estimating it 2 or 3 years ahead of time.
So for planning purposes, is the zoo planning $272,000 for? Do they have projects identified that they're hoping to touch with that money?
They would have projects identified that they're hoping to touch with that money, and in the same vein, they have what at the zoo nomenclature that would be called Fund 12 for infrastructure using county money. There's a Fund 21 for infrastructure-related projects using Zoological Society money. And so, yes, there are planned projects, and then the allocation of funding based on what's remaining from the county funds, left over from county funds, applied to those projects, and funds from the Zoological Society applied to those projects.
I'd like to make a request, and I'd like to know what was that budgeted contractual services number going back a number of years. If you can go back, I see you have 13, 14, 15, and 16 here, but those are actuals. What was the budgeted in those years? I'd like to know what the starting number was in those years? Then I'll also like to know what the planned, how the money would be planned to be used this year. Should that be actually $272,000? What would that be used for? I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
I see no other questions.
So if I can get some technical assistance to help me get to my next.
Commissioner Peter John has it.
Yeah, if I can just jump in terms of getting some details in terms of when we've talked about underwriting, and I'd like to know in terms of what degree it's fully or partially underwritten, and exactly, in terms of if it's in the private sector, that's fine, but if it's underwritten other ways, or if it's coming in from whatever sources, and if it varies depending upon whether it's in a Title I school or a non-Title I school, or however it may vary, I'd certainly like to get that information as part of Commissioner Howell's request. I'd like to add on to it if I could.
Do you guys understand the?
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you.
Behind your tab, Community Development, and you're going to see on page 585, you're going to see there that housing, economic development, technical education, Wichita State are also included under economic development. Housing, as you recall, is now part of aging, and so when Health and Human Services report, they'll talk about the housing budget. EcoDevo, technical education, WSU, I think all three of those are part of Mr. Cronus's overview responsibilities. So today, we're just going to talk about those two, the Extension Council and the community programs. The community development overall mission is to promote the growth of a healthy and productive community that successfully integrates the natural, the social, and the economic environment. Again, as I mentioned, the two programs or departments of programs we can talk about today is Extension Council and the community programs that are part of the community development division of county government. The mission for the Extension Council is dedicated to a safe, competitive food and fiber system and to strong, healthy communities, families, and youth through integrated research, analysis, and education. And for community programs there, it's to support local agencies providing enhanced quality of life for residents of Sedgwick County. Extension County services instruction in agricultural, family and community sciences, 4-H youth development, community and economic development initiatives that are external research-based information that helps citizens improve their standard of living and quality of life. Customers are all persons of Sedgwick County, and as you all know, the Extension Council is authorized, and the county's relationship with the Extension Council is authorized through KSA 2-608. A couple of years ago, when the Extension Council had a cut in county funding, those reductions primarily have come from reducing office support and agent staff by 25%. I believe currently there is one vacant position in each department, agriculture / horticulture, 4-H development, and family and community services, sciences. The 2016 requested funding from property taxes for the Extension Council is 800, and this is on page 5, it starts on page 586, 587. It's $825,421. This is the same funding as last year. And then the funding for the community programs is $42,214. This is the same funding as last year. $34,214 is for transportation program coordinated by the department agent for Oakland residents, and $8,000 for the mediation center. Non-property tax fund requests, there are none from Extension Council or for community programs. There are no decision packages for either of those or revenue packages. Again, the total property funds requested is $867,695, and no non-property tax funds, no decision packages, either, no revenue packages. That concludes the community development, my portion of the community development division report. Be happy to answer any questions.
When this says the requested amount for the extension office, is that what the extension office requested, or just have we just put in the same number?
We work with the Extension Council, and it's the same number from last year.
Are they going to? Oh, well, we have someone there. So, okay.
I don't know what Angela and her board's going to do, but you may be getting visited by them as you have in the past.
Well, I guess that's what. Okay, fair enough. Thanks. And I noticed all those other cultural things, they're not really listed there specifically. It may be helpful.
Under community programs,
Yeah, to email that out to all the commissioners to remind them.
I'll do it. There's two. There's only two, but I'll do that, yes.
There's only two. I thought there were, okay.
Under Culture and Rec, there's 6, but under community development, there's only 2. That's that transportation program in Oaklawn and the mediation center. Used to be we had visioneering under there, but we haven't funded visioneering.
Okay, well, you might as well send all of them and separate the within one email then. Okay, so that's
We'll
a
do.
little different than what I thought. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Do we have, I don't think, do we have any questions for the no? Okay.
All right, Commissioners, our next presentation is from the county appraiser. Mr. Borchard is here, and we will be on page 97 of your binders. And Michael, I'll turn it over to you.
Go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
The primary mission of the appraiser's office is to fairly and accurately discover, list, and value all tangible taxable property within Sedgwick County, along with meeting all statutory requirements. We maintain in-house training. We acquire current information to ensure accuracy and provide information to all who come in contact with our office in a courteous, professional manner, and educate the private and public sectors relative to the appraisal process. In response to PVD's 2014 directive, which states for the 2015 and 2016 valuation years, the county or district appraiser shall perform all appraisal functions in conformity with the uniform standards of professional appraisal practice. The county appraisers are required to develop the appraisal estimates that become the assessments for the various taxing districts. Therefore, the county commissioners are the client and the taxing districts are the intended users of the appraisal. For real property, there's roughly 219,800 individual parcels, including residential, agricultural, multifamily, and commercial and industrial, and right around 37,000 personal property accounts. Overall, there's 90 plus taxing authorities. Our goals and priorities continue to be to produce high-quality, defendable appraisals, promote employee professional development across the department, use current technology when it creates efficiencies, and maintain quality customer service. This is the parcel count since 2012. We do expect there to be modest parcel growth in 2016. One of the performance measures we look at over time is the cost to produce $1,000 of assessed value, and it's basically just comparing the total assessed value with our annual budget. You can see we've been right around $1 since 2012. Another key performance measure is the ratio study. It compares the appraised value to sale price after the valuation date. You can see for residential and commercial property in 2014, the median ratio for commercial property was 93% of sale price, and for residential property it was 96% of sale price. You'll see the bracket on the y-axis there between 90 and 110. Those are we're required to be inside that for substantial compliance. So we compare parcels per employee over time. You can see that our employee count has remained stable, as well as the parcel count has not seen much growth over the last 5 years. When we compare parcels per employee to some of the other larger jurisdictions in the state, we see that Sedgwick County, as compared to Shawnee County, right around 3,400. Johnson County has 216,000 parcels and 86 employees. Shawnee County has 75,600 parcels and 22 employees. And Wyandotte County has 69,000 parcels and 32 employees. Just to mention a few recent adjustments over the last 6 years. We realized a lot of efficiencies by consolidating offices. 6 years ago, we had employees in the courthouse at 434 North Market and various tag locations, tag office locations. We've eliminated 8 positions. We extended our PC replacement plan. We reduced some professional development travel expenses, cut back on professional services, and we've managed our vacancies very carefully. See, over the last 4 years, the employee count has been at 65, and we expect to keep the staffing levels the same for 2016. So the base budget allocation, our target budget for 2016 for the most part matched the 2015 budget. So we were able to align our expected operating costs with our 2015 adopted budget. Primary costs under contractuals are our lease at 4035 East Harry, utility costs, the annual mailings for valuation notices, and some professional services. And for commodities, it's PC replacement, software, and maintenance. Some possible challenges. Always pending legislation that could affect processes and costs. Relocation of the appraiser's office could affect lease renewal and moving expenses. Contract terms for future oblique imagery flights. We're going to need to update our images in 2017. And appraisal operations are extremely software reliant. Orion, our CAMA system, and Aumentum, the tax administration system, always looking at upgrades, enhancements, and maintenance. So in summary, we continue to look for opportunities to maximize efficiencies with technology, employee professional development, and continued quality customer service. That's my report. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Commissioner Peterjohn.
Yes, Mike, I'd like to get an electronic copy of your presentation too.
Okay.
Let me ask you, what's your head count as of this morning?
We have 61 on staff right now.
Okay. One performance measurement I'd be interested in seeing is a breakdown in terms of volume of appeals on valuation and how those appeals got sorted out in terms of if they, how many ended up getting into small claims or ended up going all the way, full way into BOTA. I don't know if there's an easy way of putting out information in terms of, the number that resulted in a revision to the valuation and drop the valuation. But that's a key performance measurement that I think is really important and would be very helpful to me as in looking at this report going forward.
Okay.
And I don't know how if you've got any sort of a ballpark number in terms of how we're doing this year compared to, say, 2014 as of, May 14th this year compared to where we were a year ago at this time in terms of appeals and protests.
We certainly have a few less informal appeals in 2015 compared to prior years, but I don't have the exact numbers with me. I can get that to you though.
Well, I think that's a key measurement in terms of how things are going. That certainly I think is important from my perspective. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other commissioners with questions? Commissioner Norton?
Mike, go back to slide number 8. I think it's slide 8.
Is that the one you want?
No, I want the one with the red line on it that shows where you. There you go. Slide 7. I'm sorry. Talk about that because we've been out of the guidelines before, and our commercial is still relatively low. And we continue to hear that commercial properties are assessed or appraised too high, but in the continuum over the years, that has fallen below 90%, and it's just barely above 90% right now. So talk about how that is comparable to values around the state and why that is important to stay within that range.
Well, the importance of the ratio study is we need to keep in mind that the Constitution sets the assessment rates. Okay, the assessment rate for commercial property is 25%. So our appraisal to sale ratio at 93%, this would actually suggest that the actual assessment rate for commercial property in Sedgwick County is closer to 23% than it is 25%. If you look at residential property, the constitutional assessment rate is 11.5%. Since our median ratio is at 96%, then the actual assessment ratio for residential property in Sedgwick County is closer to 11% than 11.5%.
So it would indicate that maybe comparatively we're a little undervaluing property as opposed to overvaluing it. Is that correct?
Well, as an example, if Johnson County's commercial ratio was at 100%, then their assessment ratio would be 25%. So, yeah,
Because that's the 100% mark that you're trying to hit.
right.
I think that's important to note, that we're not pushing that envelope up to 110% in our county, that we're trying to maintain below the 100% at an exact parity of 100% for 25% and 11.5%. And I think that's been the standard if you look at it for a long time. Now, residential about hit 100% in 2011, and we knew that was a little high, and I think we tried to watch it real close to be sure that we were monitoring what the market was really doing in our community. And it stabilized below that. And truthfully, we had a little bit of spike in commercial, but it's dropped back down. And I don't remember the years, but we were out of compliance on commercial for 3 or 4 or 5 years in a row, were we not?
Back in the mid-90s, yeah.
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 That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Peter John?
Yes, let me jump back, Mike. You mentioned that there is going to be an aerial that's going to have to be done in 2017. Do you have any sort of since you mentioned that's 2 years out and we're not on a biennial budget, so I was just kind of curious how big an out year cost is that likely to be?
It depends on how we make the arrangements. It's if we just decide to put it into our annual budget, it would be roughly $71,000 a year, and that would give us a flight in 2017 and an updated flight in 2020. So we get 2 flights, and over a 6-year period, the annual payments would be right around $71,000 a year.
Wait a minute, you're talking about, is it like a one-time cost of, what's the cost to do this one time?
For just the one flight, I think it's close to $300,000.
Okay. Is there a statutory requirement on how often that has to be done?
If we're going to use it in our processes, it needs to be updated once every 6 years.
Okay. Appreciate that information. Thank you.
Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just, excuse me, I'm looking at the, on page, slide number 12. It shows pretty big jump between 14 and 15, about $325,000 increase between the two budgets. I was just curious, contractuals and commodities, I don't know if that's always the same description for every agency. Is there something unique about this agency that's a pretty significant increase on contractuals and commodities on this particular agency? Is there something is there an explanation to that might help me understand?
On commodities?
Commodities and contractuals both jumped up between 14 and 15. Of course, and we're holding those at the higher level, so I'm just curious what happened in those 2 years that brought that increase, do you know?
I think, Commissioner, it's probably distinguished by the fact that it's actuals for 13 and 14.
Okay.
And so they haven't spent the full amount of their budget, and so those amounts have been pretty flat and pretty steady. They just haven't spent as much as their budget.
So when the
was
15
out.
actuals come out, it might be much lower than what I see here?
Right.
Okay, that helps. And then my only other question would be, so yeah, you did drop 8 to FTE, but at the same time, from 13 to 15, you had an average of 7.35% pay increase for the 65 people. I'm just curious, was there some kind of a study done that drove that? I mean, that's a big change. 14.7% increase over the 2-year change from 13 to 15. That seems like a lot. So is there something that would explain that?
Well, and this will be true for most of the departments you look at. We have had pay increases. I know the appraiser's office, when we went through the classification and compensation study last year, did have some adjustments greater than the 1.26% that was kind of applied to most part-time or most full-time positions. But in addition, one thing that I think is important to remember is that personnel includes not just salaries, but it includes our health benefit costs, our retirement costs, and those things we know have gone up the last few years. So that would be true for most departments, I would say.
And in that regard, is there some kind of an average across all the agencies we could look at and say, generally speaking, here's what happened to salaries between 13 and 14 and 14 to 15? That would be kind of good to kind of understand. You know, I understand a lot of this is based on economy. Some of it may be COLA, cost of living type of adjustments. I don't know. Is there any way I could kind of get an average of what's considered kind of across the entire county? What would be?
What I think might be helpful would be for us to prepare maybe a summary for a few years of what the compensation pools, what our health insurance has done, because every department is going to be different in terms of vacancies, and
Sure.
and so averages I think will distort the truth, but we can give you at least what we planned for.
How often do you do this classification and compensation study? How often does that happen?
Once every 8 or 10 years.
Okay. And this was done in 2012?
It began in April of 2013 and was brought to the Commission April of 2014 for implementation, and that actually occurred in mid-July of 2014.
Okay, so then a lot of corrections were made that following budget cycle?
For 2015, right.
2015, okay. All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Lindsay, so I'm clear, the 2014 actual is an actual, and the 2015 is a revised.
Is the budget.
Okay, so that wouldn't say that the employees saw that much salary increase.
Okay. Anyway, her explanation was very helpful. That works. Thank you.
Commissioner Unruh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not really a budget question, I guess, Mike, but we're falling inside this performance measurement pretty consistently, it appears, ever since I've been here. Do other counties, are they always inside that, or do you know that answer?
There's always some counties that are not in there. I know that.
But generally, everybody...
Most of the counties are inside those parameters, yes.
Okay. Just curious. Thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Because we were running a bit over schedule, we have asked the district attorney to be here at 11:15, so if I could ask the board's permission to have a break until then.
So be it.
Thank you. We'll be back at 11:15.
How are you? Good. How about yourself? I got to see the Oh, yeah.
Order up a lot of stuff. Commission gifts.
I guess that's
Pretty good business there for Sam at lunchtime.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Okay, good to know. I'll be running back.
You want this?
Yeah.
All right, looks like we're ready to go.
Okay, the next one that we have this morning is the district attorney, and Mr. Bennett is here, and we will be on page 332 of your binders behind the public safety tab. And with that, I will turn it over to you.
Sure. Well, good morning.
Morning.
Just to sort of state the obvious, the budget proposal for 2016 is actually for our office no increase, and my numbers from this year's budget are the budget's $10,331,806, and our proposal for next year's $10,225,487. So actually, it's a slight decrease over the current budget. Give you some idea also of how we handled this, 2014 as our last completed year. Obviously, we gave back to the county about $185,000 over that budget, and I think maybe the question I would ask, and was asked at the time of the managers' meeting we had a couple weeks ago, is what are we doing how are we saving money like this? A couple of things I'd point out. I also wanted to mention one other thing. Our last grant is ending July 1 of this year. We're no longer on any sort of grants, federal, state, otherwise. It was frankly, not a particularly good use of our resources. We felt like, for instance, you'd have a person who was grant funded through VAWA, Violence Against Women Act, somebody who was serving subpoenas, that sort of thing. And if they finished earlier in the day, because of the grant conditions, they're not allowed to step over and do anything else. They were so limited. And while those things were beneficial and there was some money here and there, it was always so tenuous. We had good people working for us who, there were times I'd have to talk to our budget folks in HR and say, if this grant didn't come through, we're going to let somebody go, and that's 15 years of worth of institutional history with this office that's walking out. So we did so little of it. It just became, frankly, a better way to run the office. We felt to do away with that. So that's one other point. But back to what are we doing to try to save things? I guess my thought is, since I'm not asking for a lot, I'm not asking for any more money than I did this year. I don't want to take up your time unnecessarily, but I do think that you're owed an explanation as to how we're spending the money that you're giving us. And so if you'll indulge me for a bit, I'll tell you a little bit about what we're up to. Excuse me. One of the things, I didn't put it in the, this is a slide I'll get to here in a moment, but I thought I'd start with something else. I know, Commissioner Howell, you weren't here last year, so you didn't hear this. The others, this would be a little old hat for them. But I started something when I took over, we called it the IAD docket, Initial Assessment Docket. The idea was that we would start processing our cases in our criminal docket faster than they had been in the past, and trying to identify cases that were most likely to be cases that are going to be resolved by something short of a trial. We're talking non-person crimes, property crimes, drug crimes, etc., things that typically resolve short of going to trial. In the past, we had always just assigned those out. Attorneys would work the case, and then they would, resolve themselves in due time. The problem is, in July of 2012, right before I won the primary, pardon me, we had 1,246 cases on our jury trial docket sitting there waiting for processing. That's a lot of cases. You do the math, 52 weeks in a year, 8 judges on in the criminal assignment, and about 20 of my trial attorneys who were handling cases. We frankly just didn't have the resources to get these things worked off, which in and of itself, it may not be a bad thing, but when you start talking about running an office with that hanging over your head, it becomes an issue. We got to serve subpoenas. Every time a subpoena gets issued, every time a case gets continued, there's another human being who deals with and processes. That's the clerk's office. That's the sheriff. That's our office. It's just a county-wide issue. So there's only so much I can do in terms of making defendants plead earlier and that sort of thing, but we can set up the system to be more efficient. And one of the things we did was set up this IED docket, and we had an attorney who these cases would come in. We would have everything ready to go, and at the summons docket, that attorney would show up. We worked with the defense bar, and they had someone that the counterpoint to our attorney. Here's a manila envelope with a CD with all the discovery. Here's the best offer you're going to get. Here's all the restitution. Here's your client's criminal history. This is it. The moment you meet your client for the first time, you got this from our office. And the attorney on the other side then can sit down and go, okay, this is where we're at. Our thought was if we could have that moment before it even got into the cycle, that I felt like there was a chance for cases to get resolved sooner. It was an untested theory, but I felt it was one worth pursuing. And so I can tell you now, we've run the numbers again through end of April of 2015, 16 days ago. In 2013, we started in March. Didn't actually get it up and running until about March of that first year. So the numbers so essentially we've got 25 months worth, just a little over 2 years worth of cases. And 1,164 cases have been processed using the IAD docket that never went back to the jury trial docket. And as a result, and I can't say that the IAD docket gets full credit for this, but it takes a lion's share of it. Our criminal trial, jury trial dockets have stayed consistently for the last 25 months. Well, it took a little while to get it up and running, but have stayed consistently under 800 cases. Remember, we are at 1,246. We've gotten as low as 750, but we're staying under 800, which I still think there's room for improvement. But this tells me that this effort has worked. And so when I come to you now and say I don't need an increase in my budget, some of that has to do with the fact that we're processing our cases in our criminal unit more efficiently, because this is one of the ways we're doing that. Now, that doesn't speak to the juvenile docket, the child needed care docket, the care and treatment docket, the traffic docket. I mean, there's a whole host of things my office does beyond the criminal cases. But this is one thing that I'm proud of the way the office has responded. A second thing now is this slide before you, the economic crime unit. Now, this is something that didn't exist before. I was in charge of the sex crimes unit in my previous life as a deputy district attorney, and part of the sex crimes unit was, of course, sex crimes, domestic violence, human trafficking, and the like. But I was also in charge of economic crimes, which I'm not sure I totally thought was a good marriage of the two, but I understood it had to go somewhere, and I was willing to do it. But it struck me that economic crime is, and I got a lot of this, frankly, campaigning. You talk to people, and you know, folks know people who are murdered and raped and terrible things happen to them. But everybody knows somebody who's been a victim of an economic crime. And that's a theory, or something I want to go back to in my final comments to the board. But it seemed to me that we needed to give a standalone attention to those kinds of crimes in this community, because I think, I'm assuming when you go out and speak to your constituents, that is something that's going to come up. You know, what's being done about my garage being broken into, my car being broken into, my identity being stolen. And so we created a standalone economic crime unit, put a chief in charge of that, same as the gang unit has, same as the sex crimes unit. It's on the same par within our office. And we now have a chief plus 3 attorneys. And you'll see those FTEs assigned in the budget book here. Currently, we have over 500 cases, roughly. I'd say, on balance, over the course of the last 2 years, that unit has handled at any given time about 500 cases between those 4 attorneys. So well over 100 cases per attorney. But some of that is being assisted by the fact that the IED docket's taking a lot of those economic crime cases away from them, so they can focus on the ones they really need to focus on, not the ones that are going to be resolved anyway. And some of the things the benefits that comes from that is, here's a simple one. 231 cases last year, calendar 2014, 231 cases were resolved by that unit alone, those 4 attorneys, prior to a preliminary hearing taking place. In the process of things, if someone's charged with a felony crime, the first hearing they have is a first appearance. You've seen those on TV. That's where the judge talks to the guy on the TV in the orange jumpsuit. But the first time he's actually in court is a preliminary hearing where witnesses have to show up and testify. And that unit with 4 guys resolved 231 cases prior to the prelim being heard. That means no subpoenas get issued, no victims get inconvenienced, the case is processed efficiently and moved on down the road. Another measure of success in my mind is economic crime typically means there's a economic consequence to the victim, meaning they have restitution. Typically what has always happened is restitution gets ordered. The judge says you're going to pay the 10 grand you owe the guy, and you pay it over the course of your 3, 4, 5 years of probation. Our chief of that unit came to me after the first year and said, you know, a lot of these people have the means to pay back what they've taken. You know, as long as there's no quid pro quo, this is not a civil firm that we're running here. I mean, I can't negotiate for money. But at the same time, if there's a recognition that you do owe this person a great deal of money, and if you want to be able to go to the judge in good stead and show him that you're taking this seriously, you paying your restitution up front is certainly something that would be beneficial to you. And just simply by having that kind of conversation and making sure that payment of restitution is incorporated into the plea negotiations. The first year they did it, they got $10,000 paid up front at the time of the entry of plea. Again, not as a condition of the plea, but part of the contracted for negotiations. I thought that's pretty good. 10 grand, that's good. 2014, $410,000 paid up front to victims in Sedgwick County because that unit simply paid attention to it. That to me is a success. So I guess my point is we're doing more, not maybe with less, but we're just being more efficient about the mechanism in which we're attacking our responsibilities. And that's, again, I had this idea that an economic crime unit would be good for the community, but they've exceeded my expectations. And I'm proud to tell you this is how your money's being spent. And so I think this is a good thing for the community. Last thing I'll turn to is just sort of a look ahead. My goal is to not ask you for more money when I don't need it, but when I do, I'll come back and explain why I am. But we're looking forward, and I'm not talking a year from now, but maybe a 10-year look ahead, and that's not being presumptuous that I'll be the one standing here on behalf of the District Attorney's Office in 10 years. Who knows who will be here, but somebody, whoever the DA is, me or someone else, is going to come over the next 5 to 10 years and talk to you about space. And I'll just generalize here in the last minute or two of my presentation, but violent crime nationally, the trend is it's going down, and I think that's consistent with what we're seeing here in Sedgwick County. That being said, the old days when the guy, when I started 20 years ago as a prosecutor, guys walking into liquor stores and convenience stores with a pistol and holding up the clerk was fairly regular occurrence. You'd get those cases with some frequency. You don't see that very often anymore. But what we do see are people who break onto the computer, steal your identity, steal your credit cards, steal, it's economic crime. No point of a gun, because the penalties for me, if I use a gun to commit my crime, go through the roof. Firearm presumptions, federal, and the feds get involved, etc. But I can take your life savings with no gun involved, just a keyboard, and the penalties are significantly less for me as a bad guy. So there's a lot more of that going on. As a result, I've told my economic guys, I said, your unit someday is going to be the biggest unit in this office. Maybe not in my tenure, but 20 years from now, 30 years from now, I would think that that's a unit that's going to have 10, 20 attorneys in there, unless things change significantly over where I see them. But with how beholden our society is to computers, I see nothing but opportunity for criminals to continue to take advantage. So my point is we're at this point, we've converted a couple of closets, even an old bathroom to office space, and we're going to run out of space eventually. We're not there yet, but I just want to kind of let you know. I know there has been talk about maybe an administrative building and some shuffling of where people are housed within the courthouse. I'm just making sure that the commission's aware that there's going to come a day when we're going to need some more space, but we're not there yet. One last thing I'll point out is a good example of how we're trying to squeeze more efficiency. We've even got it down at the juvenile division. If you've gone to that courthouse, when you walk down that long hallway headed back to the east toward our office, kind of like I would have called it like a California split home. We have a downstairs and an upstairs, kind of a halfway. Anyway, it's kind of an odd. We don't have a receptionist, is what I'm getting at. We have two. And it's occurred to us that we could, simply by putting a sign out front and maybe a little bit of an awning over that, direct people to one receptionist and not two. We wouldn't have to have two people answering the window and answering the phone on two levels, and try to do it with one, and then take that staff member and have them doing something else for us within the structure. So these are the kind of things we're working on right now to, again, just get a little more efficiency out of what we're doing, and why it is that I can stand here and say I'm not asking for any more money than I did last year. So that's the gist of it. I wanted to give you the highlights, kind of tell you the things that we're pleased with, and how things have been, I think, successful, and answer any questions you might have.
Commissioner Peterjohn. If I could jump in, with changes coming down from the state on metal theft, that sort of thing, can you speculate, and I know it'd be hopefully the best update, speculation, but what type of trends that might be with the change in the state law on the metal side? And I know that's a growing problem, and
sure,
I'm looking out in terms of other things that may grow from that too.
Well, if the current bill passes as it's expected, well, it's going above the line, I understand, tomorrow in the House. That bill creates a new crime called aggravated criminal damage to property, and the idea is to try to attend to the types of cases and identify them statewide uniformly. Part of the problem we have now is sometimes they're treated as burglaries, sometimes they're treated as thefts, sometimes they're treated as criminal damage to property. But we try to create a crime that would address all of these, so we, number one, can do a better job of tracking. Number two, it comes with a database that allows law enforcement to hopefully be able to track where these people are selling this stuff and go after the big thieves, I don't know what else to call them, who are doing the most of this. I think there's an opportunity for some more cases to come in. I think there's more than that, though, an opportunity for taking down some of the larger rings. Let me give you a quick example. We did this in the first year of the office, that I was in the office, rather. There was I don't know what else to call them, but a crime organization, fairly well organized. It was a coordinated effort between state and local and federal officials, law enforcement. These guys were moving, they call them paper hangers. They're writing bad checks all over town. They're just hanging paper everywhere they go. Nothing major, no guns, a little bit of drugs, but mainly paper crimes. By the time we were done doing this investigation, and what I'm still pending before the feds, I'll simply say, when they brought them all in, I went down to the station to see, and they had a tub full of cash. I've never seen so much cash in my life, and it was hundreds of thousands of dollars that these people were doing. So my point is, if we do a better job of identifying the organizations, you take down an organization, yeah, you'll have a few more cases, but hopefully that's 10 or 15 bad guys off the streets who aren't continuing to create new cases. So it's too early for me to say whether or not this new crime and the databases and the ability to identify rings of people, because there are rings who do this scrap metal theft, is that going to lead to more cases? I'm hopeful that, like in that experience, it's an anecdote, but in that experience, yes, in the short term, but in the long term, if we take them off the streets, we'll have fewer cases long term. Maybe a little Pollyanna, but I think there's certainly that possibility. So hopefully that answers or at least circles back to your question.
It gets to the point, and I wanted an update anyway in terms of where things stood with it, because it continues to be a problem out in my area and needs to be addressed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else?
Any other questions for the district attorney? Commissioner Norton?
Mark, this is ancillary, but talk a little bit about the Child Advocacy Center. And I know you've been very involved in that. The DA's office is critical to that. When you start talking about internet crimes on the side of the financial and everything, we know that there's tons of internet crimes against children, pornography, all of that. Not to mention human trafficking is going up. And then just child abuse and neglect cases, child in need of care, all of that you have to deal with.
Sure.
Talk about how critical that's going to be, because we're going to have to decide about funding that too.
Absolutely.
And continuing it with the new facility and everything. So.
Well, full disclosure, I'm on the board. I'm fully committed to it. The quick two thoughts. First one is when this first came to my attention that there was such a thing as a Child Advocacy Center, I thought, well, we're doing pretty good in Sedgwick. I don't know that we need that. That sounds like kind of frankly, a touchy-feely thing. Why do we need such an animal? I was sent to Columbus, Ohio, to look at a CAC up there, and with the who at the time, Ron Pascal, was the deputy, still is, of juvenile, and he and I stood in the Chicago airport on our way back, just the two of us, and I said, okay, this is a game changer. This thing is something else, and came back and really fully committed ourselves to trying to get one in Wichita. The reason being, I'll couple this with another conversation I had last week. I went to the Rotary and saw Mr. Holden, he's the counsel for Charles Koch Industries, and he's talking about criminal justice reform. And he and I had a good conversation a couple days later about some of the things that he's interested in. One of the points I made to him was that the concerns he's brought up are genuine concerns that do need to be addressed by the criminal justice system. The ancillary consequences to being involved in the criminal justice system, being a convicted felon, and what that does to somebody and their ability to reintegrate into the community and find a job, and all these things. I understand that those are long-term consequences. I think a Child Advocacy Center plays into that assessment very, very, very well for this reason. When a kid gets victimized in a sexual or physical abuse scenario, it's a terrible crime, and we as a society want to stop that. We want to put the bad guy away and punish him. And that's how I looked at it for 15 years when I was doing those crimes. Get the bad guys, get the rapists, put them away. And then when I'm done, shake the hands of the parents. We hand them some pamphlets about how to go get counseling and wish them well. We know, though, that those kids live long lives. And the impact that it has on their mental health and their well-being goes on for years. And the ability to get them better help, more wraparound care in those first nights, that first night that it happened, the first night they finally tell what has been happening to them for months. The fact that they can come to a place where they get one interview, where they have wraparound services from social workers, from cops who know how to interview them from the totality of the circumstances, and then long-term care, a place where they can go and at least have know that they can get long-term counseling and access to those kind of services. I think we serve society long-term in a way that putting the bad guy away by himself doesn't even begin to speak to. So the Child Advocacy Center, I think, to me is and that model is it's one of those things when you think about it, sort of the 35,000-foot view. I think, why weren't we doing this all along? It's just kind of common sense to me. These are really remarkable resources that communities of our size do have around the country, and when they've been utilized, they've frankly become kind of a beacon to the community. And so I'm fully supportive of it. I think it's incumbent upon us to try to not only put the bad guys away so they don't do it again to anyone else's kid, but also make sure that the kids who do suffer these unspeakable crimes are in a position to really recover. I'll tell you one last anecdote. I got this ability, or got invited. My wife and I went to a wedding about a month and a half ago of a young woman who I met in the lowest point of her life. She and her sisters had been abused by their father and their brothers. For the first time in my career in 20 years, I was invited to a wedding of a victim who I helped. She and her sister got the help they needed. They went through their church and through other resources in the community. You would have known because they were in the newspaper. Finally, when they got older, they told their story publicly. They went on the Oprah Winfrey Show and very bravely told their story to the world. That success story where I get a call and I get to go see a girl who's recovered, who's got somebody and she's in a loving relationship with, who's a good kid she met at church, and have this this trajectory for a real recovery from something that, I couldn't even, literally the word I used at the time from the judge was, it's unspeakable what they went through. You have to turn off the TV and not let anybody hear what I have to say if I told you the details of what they went through. But for her to get through this and be able to have a happy moment like that, and I get a chance to be a part of it, was unusual. I wish I had more of that, and I think a CAC provides more opportunities for that than just the anecdotes. So it's no secret I'm a big supporter, and I'll stand here all day long if you want to and tell you why this is a great thing. But those are just some initial thoughts. So, anyone else?
Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I think you're doing an outstanding job. Thank you for really doing things that are really impressive. You're representing our county extremely well, and I really like what you're doing. But
appreciate it.
It's interesting to me your budget from year to year is virtually equivalent at the end number, but I am seeing some differences on some of the charts I'd like to ask you about, and I think they're all related to juvenile issues. Let me just point them out real quickly. On page 339 under the juvenile heading, there's a -4 FTE there and a budget difference that shows that change. And then over there on page number 344 under the juvenile diversion, there's an addition of 5.2 FTE, and then below that, child in need of care plus 5.5. And then on page 346, top of the page, juvenile intervention program, a -3.0 FTE, and over on page 347, a -2.0 FTE on the bottom under juvenile diversion UA fees. A lot of differences in FTEs up and down. And overall, it washes out to the same number, it looks like. But I'm just curious, what is there a policy that changed that makes all this? It's all happened in 2014.
Yeah, a couple of things.
2013, 2014. So 2014 is when it all happened.
A couple of things to tell you about juvenile.
Sure.
Well, first of all, just an overall message about FTEs. Janet and I have talked, budget director in our office have talked about, do we try to give FTEs in a very general thing, sort of admin and trial? Mm-hmm. And my thought was, I would rather drill down and be as specific about how people are spending their time so you know exactly where the money's being spent. And so sometimes we go from year to year and go, are you really spending 20% of your time on this, or is that turning more to 15%? So there's a little bit of that going on just internally as we're trying to get a better grip on exactly how people spend their time. So that's part of the answer.
Sure.
The other thing as to juvenile specifically, and before I get to that, I should also point out diversions. Statewide diversion applications are down. Talked to Steve Howell, he's the Johnson County attorney. Talked to Barry Wilkerson, the Riley County attorney, and others around the state. I don't know if it's people aren't seeing the upside or the benefit to them for getting a diversion. That's adult, juvenile, etc. If there's just less liquid money in the home. People want to spend that extra $100 to get on diversion. I don't know, but I do know it's kind of a statewide issue. So there is that. But the final thing I was going to point out is in juvenile, especially in the child need of care side of things, we have had one significant event that took place from when I took over in January 2013, and it took place in that first spring and early summer. Historically, SRS, now DCF, had had a role in child needed care cases that they simply gave back to us. So let me walk you through that quickly. When a child needed care comes into the system, there is a initial appearance, then there's a period of time, attorneys are provided, and then there's a hearing, and it's essentially like a trial in the criminal arena, and that's when they are determined whether or not they are or are not a child in need of care. Then it goes what they call post-disposition. You get into the dispositional phase of things, and that's where they decide, okay, what are we going to do with the kid? Are they going to be reintegrated? Is there going to be parents going to be terminated? They're in that whole point from that moment, from the trial through what I'd call in criminal world sentencing. That's obviously not the nomenclature down there, but that second phase of things, DCF had for 25 years handled that. Their attorneys had gotten involved because their feeling was we're the ones making those, maybe not making the call, the judge ultimately makes the call, but they're the ones working with the families. I think the idea was they thought that was a good use of their resources. I was contacted by DCF Topeka in probably March of 2013, and I was told that they were no longer going to do that. The statute actually says it's the county or district attorney's responsibility unless they reach an agreement. And as I came to the board the first budget cycle and said they no longer wanted to be in that business and wanted to give it back to me. And it wasn't exactly a negotiation because if they don't want it, they don't have to keep it, and I had to take it. So at that time, that was about 900 cases that were open at that point that my office was going to have to absorb. Rather than reaching critical mass, and frankly, coming to you in an emergency state, we negotiated with them to say, finish what you started. It's unfair for our attorneys to have to step in the middle of a case. But from this moment forward, we'll move forward and take those. And that is what we've done. The one way we've done it is to take another attorney, transfer an attorney from downtown to Sync, and that was one huge change in FTEs, and then we've been working through this. We are now, fully involved in that process, and I think that's been some of our, not growing pains, but trying to decide what's it going to take to handle that much. We don't handle more cases, we just handle them longer than we ever did before, and that's part of why you see some of these changes over time in the FTEs in juvenile.
I understand the sync part of that. That makes good sense. I'm curious about the diversion comment you made, because it shows we have an addition 5.2 on juvenile diversion.
FTEs, you're saying? I'm just make sure.
Yeah, it's an additional. Yeah. It went from 2.0 FTE in 13 to 5.2 FTE in 14, and we're basically there going forward. So that was actually an increase in people assigned to juvenile diversion. Overall, I mean, I think one of the things I think the commission is interested in is basically how to handle juvenile offenders in Sedgwick County, and there's been a lot of discussion about that. And I know I can see that touches your office as well.
Absolutely.
So
sure.
Yeah, and so you have a lot of subject matter in your budget that deals with juvenile criminal behavior and how to deal with that in terms of detention or diversion. Not detention, but diversion and I guess representation, that type of thing. So anyway, there was just a lot of ups and downs on the different. I think I saw 6 different places in the book here that deals with juvenile offenders. So I guess 5 of them deal with juvenile offenders, and so I was just curious if there was some policy besides. You mentioned the CIC, the SYNC kids from the state level. Is there anything else in the county that's changed that's affected your juvenile criminal offenders?
I think part of it is, I'll ask if Jeanette has any further thoughts on this, but okay, that's why I bring Jeanette up here. She cuts right through the smoke for me.
Okay.
That was one of the things we had. Those were some grant funded positions. I'd forgotten that, and we've done away with some of those grant funds and put them back on our county budget. For all the reasons I said to begin. It's a tough way to run an office when you're totally beholden to they're on a different annual cycle as well, and we don't find out sometimes till June or July, and we've actually gone to the commission, to the county manager a time or two asking for if the money doesn't show up, a couple of years ago at the federal level, the VAWA grant got kind of hung up in a political battle between a couple of different factions, and there was no guarantee VAWA was going to be funded, and we were sitting here with people coming to work not knowing if they're going to be paid, and that was one of the things. So that accounts for a couple of those positions.
You know, so that really speaks to your efficiency efforts then, because for your budget to stay the same and losing grant money and having the same responsibilities is really putting pressure on your office, and you're obviously being able to do that. So thank you for appearing, and a good explanation. Thank you.
Nothing else. Thank you all for your time. And I would lastly point out, if you do have a situation where you want to talk more about juvenile issues, or I know mental health is a big issue, you know, for just the criminal justice system and how that works, how that dovetails, at a Tuesday morning meeting or at any other point, I'll be happy to give you whatever insight I could give to help inform your decision, because I know there's a lot of things on the table right now. So take care. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Commissioners, that was our last hearing for this morning. We do have some time scheduled for discussion or questions if you have any. Otherwise, I'd recommend adjournment.
Any questions, Commissioners?
I'll just make one comment. I'm still getting used to this format. It's taking me a little time to get into the weeds here like I want to be, but so I feel like I'm just coming up to speed. So I appreciate the grace of the people in the room allowing me to I guess look foolish and stupid sometimes. But thank you very much.
All right, we're adjourned then. We're done. Thanks.
Absolutely. See you Monday.